The entire proceedings were scripted by Charlie. Every day we'd meet, and he'd decide, well, today I want you each to stand up and hold your hands in some stupid symbols. You're going to get up and scream, the old gray mare. You're going to burn an X in your head. You know, each day was scripted.
They would jump up in court and start chanting, "The judge is just a woman, the judge is just a woman." Well, that was horrifying to the women in the courtroom. That was seen by Charlie as the biggest insult.
Throughout the trial, the giggling Manson girls seemed strangely detached. Now they say that if they seemed out of touch with reality, it's because they were still living Manson's reality, taking LSD in jail and following his every word.
He was talking about how time was going to stop, that we were all just going to walk out, that everything was just going to stop. And we believed that.
When I went to the jail after it happened, and Leslie said to me she didn't know whether to cut holes in the back of her blouse or sew little pockets for her wings. She thought she was an angel.
I even asked Pat and Susan, how am I going to hide my wings? I could feel them nubbing out.
Dancing clown upon the wall.
Just outside of the court, the rest of the family was making a bizarre display of devotion.
We're going to stay here until Charlie's out.
For almost 10 months, they kept a faithful vigil, all the while weaving a vest for their guru. Like the girls inside, they mirrored Manson's every move. And with Manson in custody, it was mainly Squeaky Fromme who handled the reporters and curious crowds.
They can't grab at it, you know. They just have to be patient and give. And it's in everybody.
They said I was a spokesman. I was never a spokesman. They said I was a lieutenant. We weren't lieutenants. We didn't have orders. We didn't have badges. We weren't appointed anything. We did what we wanted to do. Each one of us took up what we felt we could carry, and we did it because we wanted to. If we did it because we thought it would make Charlie happy, we must have loved him or something like that.
On January 25th, 1971, it came as no surprise when all 4 defendants, Charlie, Leslie, Pat, and Susan, were found guilty of multiple murders. And when it was time for the jury to decide whether they would live or die, the Manson girls finally took the stand. But their goal was to save Manson's life, not their own.
After the trial started, Charlie suggested that we meaning the 3 women, try to carry the load of the case so that he could be released, you know, so that he could further carry on his works to save the world.
On March 29, 1971, 21-year-old Leslie Van Houten, 22-year-old Susan Atkins, and 23-year-old Patricia Krenwinkel became the youngest women to sit on California's death row. The jury sentenced all 3 women and their guru to die in the gas chamber at San Quentin.
I was more than willing to go to the gas chamber. The death penalty for me at the time it almost justified my not having to deal with what I had done. It was the eye for an eye. They're going to kill me. I don't have to deal with it.
But away from Manson's direct influence, Leslie, Pat, and Susan would have time to reflect on the horror of their crimes. Meanwhile, 22-year-old Squeaky Fromme had lost the only family with whom she'd ever felt truly at home, and it devastated her.
I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't know that we would be separated. I want to talk to the women. I want to talk to the girls. They're still girls to me. They'll always be girls, as I am, in that one part.
She felt guilty that they had done much more and she hadn't. She was still free. She was not in prison. She was not facing this type of sacrifice that they had been called to make.
While Manson and the women sat on death row, Squeaky tried to unite what was left of the family. It was an increasingly hopeless task, and guilt and grief would drive her to desperate measures. The trio of women who killed at Charles Manson's command had spent just 10 months on death row when the U.S. Supreme Court outlawed the death penalty. On February 18, 1972, Leslie, Susan, and Patricia saw their sentences reduced to life behind bars. Over the next few years, their devotion to Manson slowly soured.
Really, I just think that he was just a really good con artist. I feel like I was a pawn in whatever his scheme was. I'm glad that I will never again have to see him.
But on the outside, Lynette "Squeaky" Fromme stayed loyal to Manson, and she became alarmed when Pat, Leslie, and Susan began turning away from him.
She would get a response from them saying basically, look, we're the ones who are in prison, okay? We don't want to be here anymore. We want out. You know, if you're so devoted to Manson, what have you done lately?
On September 5th, 1975, Squeaky decided it was time to prove her devotion. She strapped a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol to her leg. President Gerald Ford was visiting Sacramento that day.
Ford had his hands out and was waving. He looked like cardboard to me.
When Fromme drew the gun, she was quickly wrestled to the ground. But the Secret Service found no shell in the firing chamber. Squeaky said that she had never intended to fire a shot.
I got 2 feet from him. I could have shot twice had I put the bullet in there.
Her only goal, she said, was to relay a message from Manson.
I said, Your Honor, the redwood trees need to be saved. They're the tallest trees in the world, and if you can't save your world's tallest trees, something's wrong.
Later that year, Lynette "Squeaky" Fromme became the first American woman to go on trial for attempting to assassinate a president. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
Do you have any regrets for that day?
No. No, I don't. I feel it was fate.
While Squeaky gave up her freedom, the other women struggled to regain theirs. Over the years in the same California prison, Leslie, Pat, and Susan have earned college degrees and held down jobs. At parole hearings, they've offered up remorseful words. Even Susan, who once boasted about the killings.
I know the pain and the suffering that I caused Mrs. Tate, Mrs. Frykowski, Mr. Frykowski's son, the Hinman family, the LaBianca family. I know. Nobody has to tell me. I know.
She's not fooling me. She was not remorseful for killing Sharon. It didn't bother her a bit. So you're going to turn people like this loose on the streets?
Stop to think about it. Susan Atkins has been convicted of 8 murders. She's been behind bars for 30 years. That's 3.5 years of murder. That's not enough.
Since 1971, only Leslie has tasted freedom. She received a retrial in 1977. That ended in a hung jury. And she was found guilty in a 3rd trial a year later. She's still considered the most likely to be paroled.
You know, I've thought, how do you even begin to rectify something as permanent as loss of life?
Each time Pat comes up for parole, she says it's a struggle to live with what she did.
I was just a young woman that I killed who had parents. She was supposed to live a life, and her parents were never supposed to see her dead.
Pat, Leslie, and Susan have spent 30-some years behind bars, more time than most murderers. But they believe their connection to Manson will keep them there even longer. He has been completely unremorseful.
You have beat me, knocked my teeth out, broke my neck, drugged me with drugs, dragged me up and down hallways, prison hallways, handcuffed.
This routine that he's doing now and his little clown acts on television is all part of his way of, I think, diminishing his own responsibility.